Radio button control is a new control introduced at Xamarin Forms 4.7 version, and at the time of recording this, in order to use the radio button control, what I first need to do is to enable it using the experimental flags. So this is still in experimental phase. So I'm going to go to the app delegate in the cryptolet.ios and set this flag by using the Xamarin Forms setFlags method. I need to do the same for the Android version. So I'm going to go to the main activity, and just before Xamarin Forms init, I will set this flag. Now I can use the radio button, and on the add transaction view, we are going to use the radio button to distinguish whether we are creating a new deposit or withdraw transactions. So just before radio button, we are going to add a label called, that is with text, transaction type, and add some padding. So let's say 10, 16, 10, 0. And in order to make further changes to the content of this content page, we will wrap everything inside the stack layout. Now we can use the radio button. So we can set the text of the radio button to deposit. And one of the most important properties of the radio button is the isChecked property. It can be true or false. And instead of typing true or false, we are going to bind that to the isDeposit property of the add transaction view model. Let's just add some left margin, and we have our radio button. The second radio button for withdrawn is almost the same. I just need to change the text to the withdrawn, and this is going to also be bound to the isDeposit property, but we need a reverse value of the isDeposit. So in order to do that, we will need a inverse bool converter. Let's go and create that converter. So I'm going to add new folder just for converters, and go and create new class called inverse bool converter. This needs to implement value converter. So let's implement the interface. In our convert method, we will cast to bool the value we get, and we are going to reverse that and return that value. Now we can use that in the add transactions view. First thing is to add the namespace for converters. So converters, from the converters namespace, add the resources, and in that resources I'm going to add the inverse bool converter with a key equal to inverse bool converter. And I can now use that in the withdrawn radio button. So my converter is a static resource inverse bool converter, and what's important is to set the binding mode to one way, so we won't be updating the isDeposit property of the view model through this radio button, but instead of this we will be using. So this one is enough. Finally, let's see how this looks like. Okay, let's go to the transactions. And if we want to add a new transaction, we now see the transaction type. It can be deposit or withdrawn. One last thing what we will explore is the styling of those radio buttons. So in the control custom styles.xaml, we have the style for the radio button. So this style targets the radio button. This style uses Visual State Manager. So this is a way of grouping properties by visual state that the radio button can have. Radio button can have a normal state. This means that it's not selected, that is, it's not checked. And in that case, we apply two properties to that radio button. So we set text color to the dark gray and set the opacity to the 0.8. So the purpose of Visual State Manager is to say, okay, when the radio button is not checked, meaning it's in normal state, then apply these styles. And if the visual state of the radio button is checked, meaning that we clicked on the radio button, then we are changing the text color to the primary blue color and set opacity back to 1. Let's just add the property. So we need the bool is deposit. And preview these visual changes. If the radio button is checked, then it has this blue color, and if it's not checked, then the color is dark gray and it has opacity 0.8. So that was an introduction to the radio button control. Now let's move on and implement the rest of the screen.